David Fincher is one of the most influential and distinguished directors there is. He garnered a massive popularity with his earlier movies such as Fight Club and Seven. These movies quickly transcended the idea of just a movie. They kind of became a code or a movement to live by. There is no screenwriting workshop that didn't analyze what's in the box scene from Seven.
What's in the box?
There is no corporate employee that doesn't secretly believe that he's a part of an underground fight club. But of course, we never say it out loud because of the first rule of the Fight Club.
First rule of Fight Club is, you do not talk about Fight Club.
But it seemed like the world stopped spinning with the release of Fight Club. With every single movie that Fincher released, there's always this looming question. Is this the new Fight Club? After his brief biopic tour with Mank, David Fincher's new Netflix movie, The Killer, was poised to be his long-awaited return to form. But of course, the inevitable question did come up. Is this the new Fight Club? Short answer, no. But this isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's pretty clear now that Fincher will never repeat himself. And waiting for a new Fight Club will eventually diminish your appreciation to his newest work. Movies like Zodiac or The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo or even Gone Girl have little to nothing in common with Fight Club. But they are excellent movies. The Social Network is a completely different movie from Fight Club, and for many people it's Fincher's best movie. So what I'm trying to say is that comparing The Killer to any of David Fincher's previous movies is not the best thing to do, because The Killer is probably Fincher's most challenging movie. It's a demanding movie. It's the type of movie that is bound to be divisive. It has almost no dialogue except for the inner voice of the nameless main character, which could be taxing to listen to sometimes. It sounds like the pretentious diary of a teenager that has been on Reddit for too long.
I find music a useful distraction. A focus tool. Keeps the inner voice from wandering.
The plot of the movie is the most baffling thing ever. Not because it's too complicated or intricate, but it's because of the complete opposite. What's really baffling is how simple the story is. The first plot that comes to your mind when I tell you the word The Killer is more complicated than what The Killer is actually about.
For what it's worth, I would never have involved your female friend.
It borders on being a parody at certain points, but then again, maybe it is. If you manage to get through the first hour of The Killer, you will realize that David Fincher doesn't care about the plot. He doesn't want you to focus on the plot or the dialogue, or even any of the familiar elements that you usually look for in movies. But there is this one specific thing that David Fincher wants you to pay attention to. It's the killer himself. The movie goes to extreme details about the daily habits of the killer. What he eats, how does he eat, what is his sleeping patterns, how does he get rid of the evidence, how does he reduce his heart rate, what kind of music he listens to, these types of details. One of the very first scenes that piqued my interest was when he was talking about McDonald's. He describes it as the best place to grab 10 grams of protein for €1. He gets a sandwich, sits on a bench and starts removing the bread buns and only eats the protein. Stuff like that. The movie is filled with anecdotes and it's kinda obsessed with the killer's behaviors. And there is an abundance of things to trace and behaviors to focus on throughout the movie. To the point that you can't even catch all of them. You'd have to watch the movie a few times to get the entirety of his nuances. Here it begs a question. Why David Fincher is so obsessed with the mannerism of a morally ambiguous character? Well, it's because David Fincher sees himself in the killer. Think of it. David Fincher is known for his precision. According to many producers, he takes up to 50 takes for each scene, which is way more than the usual 10 to 15 takes in any Hollywood movie. Fincher is also known for his intensive rehearsals and his obsession to match the velocity of the camera with the velocity of the character. He also has a cynical point of view about technology, while he is the first to adopt a new technology in filmmaking. David Fincher is perfectionist, self-righteous, nihilistic, obsessive, and doesn't like to miss. Does this remind you of someone? The run-of-the-mill plot, pretentious narration, and deep focus on the killer's mannerism are more or less Fincher's way of making fun of himself. He is self-aware of how smug he may seem to other people, how some of the ideas that he did in the past didn't age so well, how he despised his OCD, which dictates his unusual mannerism. If you look at the movie from this angle, everything will make sense. Fincher is the killer. He is the precise, calculated filmmaker. He follows a strict code and he doesn't falter or miss. He doesn't even compromise. He's too self-righteous, too proud to admit that his movies are personal. So when any of his movies are subject to criticism, he acts as if he doesn't take it personally, when we all know that deep down he takes it really personal. His audience are his clients. They wait for him to do the job, and when he fails to deliver, they are his worst enemy. They disrupt his tranquility because he simply cannot go on in life knowing that people didn't accept a piece of work that he did. The Killer is an extremely unconventional movie. It demands the audience to sit through pretentious monologues, slow, lengthy scenes, surface level plot, and these demands will eventually divide the audience. A majority of the people that will judge the movie will judge it solely based on these elements. But if you start to look at these elements with a more satirical perspective, you will see that Fincher is mocking his own flaws, addressing his shortcomings, and finally getting personal.